In last week's broadcast, we were discussing whether or not Revelation chapter 6's 4 horses were riding, whether they're out of the barn, so to speak. Because of popular demand to that show, not only are we going to continue that discussion, but now we're going to begin to discuss the beginning of sorrows as Jesus taught in Matthew chapter 24. Today, I'm going to show you in a way I believe you've never seen Revelation chapter 6 linked up with Matthew chapter 24. My name's Steve Cochran, and this is End Time Insights. This is a book that I wrote in 2008. It's called The Graph. I didn't really do anything with it. It's information that I had since I was young. In my teens even, God was giving me this information. I'm 56. But with the information, the revelations that this book holds, the truths that are in here, God was telling me, you can't speak it. You can't preach it or teach it. That this was an end-time message and that they would not receive it until the end. So I wasn't allowed every time I'd preach to say anything about this. But I felt released to write it in 2008. Still didn't do anything with it. Just kind of sat with it. 2011 and 12, God began downloading me more information to all of this. It was very, very strong encounters and very impactful to my life. To where I began and I wrote twice as much. This is the expanded edition. It's now twice as big, as you can see, as the first edition. And if it means anything, all 9 chapters that are here are still in this, the expanded edition. Better graphics, better illustrations. Had to step it up a little bit, make it easier to understand. Which, by the way, folks, I found out for some of you, if I got my numbers correctly, some of you have this book. And about half of you, if I understand correctly, aren't even reading it. You bought the book, but you didn't read. You're not reading the book. People say it's a page turner. You just don't know how to put it down. People read this in a couple of days somehow. They just pick it up and they don't know how to put it down. What I would do, break it out. If you have the book, break it out. Read it. Read the first chapter. The first chapter is filled with mostly illustrations. I think it won't even take you 10 minutes to read the first chapter and see what you think and see if you're able to put it down. If you are, then great. At least you took a stab at it. Pick the book up. Pick it up. Read the first chapter. In under 10 minutes, you're going to know whether or not you want to continue on or not. Now, because of, I should probably apologize. I told you last edition to look for more prophecies that are imminent. We're there, folks. We are so close on the brink of some of these things that are about to happen. I was going to give you some more prophecies. And I also told you that I was going to bring you the 2 witnesses, which will also be so more prophecies next episode, 2 witnesses after that. Problem is, due to the feedback I was getting that never even crossed my mind, the way some of you out there think. I was attempting to deal with a teaching that's out there that have been, for supposedly this teaching, the horses of Revelation chapter 6 have been riding for about the last decade. And I wanted to show, because of the criteria, according to these horses that are there, we don't have to speculate or try to assume certain things, because here's an interesting thought. If there was no criteria to these horses, and I'm talking specifically about horse 2, 3, and 4, war, famine, hunger, and disease, rather. If there was no criteria, we would actually be thinking, okay, well, you could make the argument that since John wrote the book, there's been war, there's been famine, hunger, there's been pestilence, death, disease. Has there not? So we could be arguing, since he wrote the book, or whenever you want to start, these horses have been riding. So I can see why people might think it, but all it takes is looking at the criteria that these bad boys, and they are bad boys, have. What is supposed to happen with them? And we are told that. And thankfully, again, we have information because we're now in a modern age. I mean, we keep records and we have data, and it's available at your fingertips. You've got the resources, folks. All you got to do is just basically get online. You can find out all kinds of information online if you want to take the time to research some of this. So the point that I was trying to make last week was that according to verse 8, where you get the summation in chapter 6, after you've read the fourth horse, power is given unto them, we're told. And power was given unto them over a fourth part of the earth. Them being all four horses. And here's what they're, over a fourth part of the earth, to kill with sword, war, and hunger, famine, and death, disease. A fourth part of the earth to kill, folks. I want you to be clear about this. Listen, it's not talking of a fourth part of the earth is going to be affected. No. According to death, the fourth horse, you get the summation. These all are killing a quarter of the earth. Now, I have to believe that when Jesus says it's a quarter, we're talking a quarter. We're not talking 20%. No, we're not talking 20, 15, 10, 5. No, if God says it's a quarter of the earth, then we're talking 25% at minimum are going to die by war, by famine, and by disease, folks. Now, as the research that we have available and the records that we have available, I was bringing some of that out to you last show. And I wanted you to run the numbers. And some of you got it. Many of you got it. But some of you wanted to take these horses back farther, not just over the last decade. You wanted to go back, some of you went back to the 1970s. Some of you were going back to the Great Depression, early World War due to the feedback. By the way, listen, folks, listen to me real quick. I want to stop you. Some of you are calling in and trying to get a hold of me. I'm sorry, I don't answer the calls. You're dealing with operators who are simply taking orders. Just orders, folks. They don't even give me messages. Now, sometimes I get them every now and then. You want to get a hold of me, go to CochraneMinistries.com. There's a contact page. I read the emails as best I can, reply as best I can. That's how you get a hold of me. But some of you were saying, well, they've been writing this long, they've been going on, and they were going way back. What I tried to do in the last show, you could take the last decade. I don't care if you take the last 20 years. It doesn't really matter. We have information. I'm going to put some of this information up for you on the screen at some point, folks. I'm going to show you these websites. You can go there yourself, where we've retained the records of how people die, for instance, why they die, for everything under the sun that you can think of, and some things that don't even matter. I'm kind of like, wow, that's even a record. We're keeping records for that, and it's kind of funny. We know how many people die every year. In the last show, I attempted to show, because we're talking a quarter of the earth. These horses, just these 3 horses, are going to take out a quarter of the earth by war, by famine, and by death and disease, pestilence. Nothing more. And what is a quarter of the earth? Currently, a quarter of the earth is 1.9 billion people are going to die for these 3 reasons only. Nothing more. But for the sake of argument, I went to one of these sites I'll show you. Again, I'll probably put some of this stuff up for you. I think I used the year 2015. 2015, there was 56 or 7 million people died that year. It's a lot of people. Worldwide, dying for every reason you can think of, or that's there or worth keeping a record on is a better way of saying it. And that is since over the last 20 years, this site, I'll show you the site. I don't remember the name of it. You can take a slider and it'll show you each year how many people are dying and what they're dying from. You can go back 20 years to 9/11. I kind of thought, well, maybe because the second horse is war, people might say, well, 9/11 was a great sword, a great war, which is what it means. A great sword is a great war. The second horse is told that he's going to take peace from the earth, from the planet. Peace is taken from the planet, that they should kill one another, and there was given unto him a great sword. Now, some people may argue that 9/11 was a great war. folks, the numbers according to war, and then again, you can look this information up. I got so exhausted trying to combat, saying it still didn't get any more. Even when we had 9/11, you're still dealing with numbers of people dying via war. 30, 40, 50. It got about as high as 150,000 people dying a year from war. You can go all the way back if you'd like to. You can go back all the way back to 1914, where the First World War, I bothered to go back that far. World War I. Since then to now, or for a whole century to this point, there's only been, I shouldn't say only, there's been 187 million war-related deaths. That includes all casualties, civilians, everything. War-related. 187 million people dying from war. And I want to bring this home, folks. We're talking war, hunger, disease. And I don't care how you divvy it up. A little more war, a little more less hunger, more disease. You can't make it. I don't care how far you go back. And that's what I was doing with some of the feedback I was getting. You're trying to take me back. Some of you were taking me back. One person, which I didn't even understand the argument that was mentioning since Roe versus Wade. I believe we're going back to 1970. That somehow there was 2.3 billion people dead. We're looking at the numbers. I'm giving it to you. 2.3 billion people have died from abortions. As if the day it was passed, 60 million started dying every year. Again, the criteria is this: war, hunger, disease. Abortion has nothing to do with hunger or war or disease. It's a completely unrelated. We are going to lose a quarter of the earth, folks, from these horses, just these 3 horses. A quarter of the earth. Currently, again, 1.9 billion people are on the planet, would tally rather. There's 7.7 billion. We'd need 1.9 billion people to die to reach 25%. According to, that's the tally that's given. And you can't do it. You're going back to 9/11. You can go all the way back. If I had one person that again attempted to contact me, the message was given this: that the famine horse, which I'm not going to get back into the details of the famine horse, the takeaway, if you watched last week's broadcast, if you haven't seen it, please go see it. I don't have time to get into it. Go to CochraneMinistries.com. Upper right-hand corner of the screen, click on shows. Look at the last show at the bottom. You'll get to see the study on these horses, according to the criteria given. The takeaway from the famine horse is that you will work a whole day to be able to pay for a loaf of bread. It's not some of you were giving me dollar figures, currency tally amounts. Every currency is different, folks. Some's inflated, some's deflated. Someone's mentioned $1 trillion note. That's somewhat. It's not. We're not talking the amount or the tally or the figure of the currency. It's how long. It's the value of the bread. How long you have to work in order to buy this loaf, approximately a loaf, a quart of wheat. Somebody said, well, back in the Great Depression, which is where you put, it's another popular search term, folks. You can put all this stuff in. You don't have to even finish typing. What was the food costs during the Great Depression? You're going to get all kinds of very good sites that actually kept data on how much food cost. All kinds of food. And bread was one of the least. Did you know that? Person, bless her soul, I believe, was telling one of the operators that they'd work all day long. The Great Depression, folks, was about loss of jobs. When you didn't have a job, it was generally going to be a good paying job, but it was never, and here's the tally for bread, a loaf of bread. You didn't have to work all day long to get a loaf of bread, not half, not even an hour's worth. Bread may have been scarce. All food was scarce. People weren't dying of hunger, though, which is what this horse is. The Great Depression was known not for hunger and people dying, but for lack of jobs. The market tanked. And according to the numbers again, bread was 8 cents a loaf for a white loaf of bread, which was, back then, if you had a job, wasn't even an hour's worth of work. This information is there for you people to find. So if you're going to say that the horse was riding all the way back in the Great Depression, he rode briefly back then. Just look this information up, folks. You can look it up. Now, I'm 56. I wasn't alive then, but I'm trusting the data I'm getting. And I tried to think, well, some people don't even have the internet. It's kind of funny. If you don't have the internet, what are you going to do? I thought of this one movie that I know everybody and their dog has seen. In 1946, it was made, 13 years after the Great Depression. And you can listen to a man named George Bailey, and It's a Wonderful Life, telling you what he made per week. You could strip away 90% of his salary, and you still would come down to having 8 cents per hour if you took away 90% of the man's salary. Hope you're getting this. Point is, bread was 8 cents a loaf. You got paid more than, if you had an 8 cents an hour job, I'm sorry for you. I hope that's not. So we don't have to rely off of memory, folks, and this type of information that we have. Now, I have online the first 9 chapters of this book at Cochrane Ministries. You also can find us on YouTube, folks. YouTube.com/Cochrane Ministries. The first 9 chapters of this book are given to you at Cochrane Ministries. Just go to the middle of the page. You can preview the book. In there, I'm going to show you a little clip. Here are the things he said to look out for. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. I put there Antichrist. Don't worry about it. I told you in the last teaching, we're going to start nailing down interpretations precisely. But I put that there because he said to look for it. And then he said wars and rumors of wars. Then he said nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. And I put war there. Okay. The next thing he said is famines. So we got famine and pestilence, obviously, pestilence, and earthquakes in divers places. So I got earthquakes there. All these are the beginning of sorrows. And they shall deliver you up to be afflicted and shall kill you. So we have Christian martyrs here. Now here's a summation of this. Here's what we've seen so far. An Antichrist or Antichrist spirit. We got war. We got famine, pestilence, earthquakes, Christian martyrs. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Now, do you recall the sequence that was in Revelation chapter 6? Well, let me show it to you here. It is identical. Identical, guys. There's no shaking this. There's no getting around this. Even the sequence, identical. It's not just the same items. The sequence of is identical. I'm about to drop a bombshell on you, but I need you to acknowledge what you've seen so far. That both chapters so far, at least on the surface, they are identical. So far, that the horses are so far the beginning of sorrows, with the addition of, in Matthew 24, earthquakes, which I'm going to talk about next week. Don't miss that show, folks. We are so close. And that's a prophecy that's coming soon. But anyway, with the exception of earthquakes, these 2 chapters thus far are the same. Elements are the same. Everything's the same. The horses are the beginning of sorrows and vice versa. When you see what I'm about to show you, this is the bombshell that I'm going to tell you about. I didn't show you the 6th seal. It's filled with criteria, so many various elements. We're not just talking like one thing. No, it's filled with all kinds of things going on in the 6th seal. When you see that in Matthew chapter 24, the exact same elements, you're going to have to throw out this idea of coincidence. There's just too many factors. But here's the point. If these 2 chapters start at the same point in time, end at the same point in time, for somebody that would say, well, Steve, okay, I acknowledge the horses could not be riding. I'm going to talk a little more in a second about it. I don't have much time left, but the horses couldn't be riding, but we're in the beginning of sorrows. If the 2 chapters are the same, and the horses aren't riding, then we are not in the beginning of sorrows. That's the takeaway. You don't get one without the other. If they're the same, if one is, then so is the other. If one is not, then so is not the other. Are you following me? Now, I'm about to show you this. I'm going to show you the 6th seal, and I'm going to line the chapters up side by side. You're going to see all the various factors and elements that are there. They're all the same. They're in the same order even. It's crazy. There's just too much data there for them not to be the same. But the point I'm going to blank out the first horse for you. And why? Because I don't have time to teach it. I'm not hiding it from you. This video is available online at CochraneMinistries.com that I'm showing you right here, and it explains all it is a chapter in the book, folks. And it actually involves a couple chapters. And I give in detail why the first horse is not a person or a spirit. As I mentioned last week, if the other horses aren't a person or a spirit, nor is the first. But I don't want to leave you guys hanging to too much. Again, you can go online or you can get the book. You can view it for free online. But here's the point. Since it's going to be blanked out, just fall back on the first most popular interpretation. You are still left with everything being identical. Now, Jesus has got done telling us he's not coming secretly. Look what he says in the next verse. Verse 27, as lightning shines from the east to the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man. That doesn't sound secret to me, guys. In fact, let's keep reading and see what this says. Look what Jesus tells us. Here's where the guesswork, is this identical, ends. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, shall the sun be darkened. Where have I heard this? And the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from the heavens, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn. Where have I heard this? And they shall see the Son of God, the Son of Man, coming in the clouds. I'm having deja vu. Coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And then he shall send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet. And they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Where have I heard all of this? Look, guys, look at this comparison. Look at all of this. Matthew 24's rendition of the coming of the Son of God is literally verbatim with Revelation's sixth seal. This is, by all accounts, the same event. Look at your side-by-side here, guys. Here's your side-by-side. Literally verbatim. Item per item, line upon line, all identical. There's a couple little extra pieces of information, tidbits, that come from Matthew 24 that Revelation chapter 6 didn't happen, but that does not make it. That doesn't make it not identical nor the same point in time. So if anybody are out there going there with that and trying to say, well, it's a different point in time, what in the world are you doing thinking that way? All you're getting is extra information. They're the same. The same, folks. Too many factors are involved to make any of this a mere coincidence. Jesus confirmed his word in the mouth of two or more. Had John write this, the same thing he was saying in Matthew chapter 24. So what do you got here? You got Matthew chapter 24 being the same as Revelation chapter 6. Or you're looking at one extreme coincidence that's a little too far gone to be a coincidence. Now, I want you to understand, again, the takeaway from this is this. If the horses are the beginning of sorrows, and it appears that they are, then if we're not seeing the horses, we're not in the beginning of sorrows. You don't get one without the other. So the chapter starts the same, both chapters start at the same point in time. They both conclude exactly at the same point in time. Now, I know this is affecting doctrines and denominations. Some people simply can't take this because this changes everything. Some of you have seen this before. Somebody saying, praise God, I've never seen it quite like that, but I've seen that, I know that, and wow, that's amazing. Thank you, Steve. Others of you have seen this, but others mainly have not been told this because it shakes everybody up. And people, just because of the sake of pride, they don't want to admit, okay, apparently it looks like they're the same thing. They have to be the same thing. But they don't want to admit it. And they don't want to retract their doctrines. Folks, listen to me. Doctrine to some people is going to be a killer. There's a ministry right now that needs your prayer that is propagating this message. I would appreciate you people pray for that ministry. Please pray for them. By the way, I heard in the back of my head, Steve, aren't you going to tell us how much George Bailey made? He made. If you don't know how much he made, I have nothing left to say to you. Forget. I'm sorry. Forget. Erase that. I should probably add that. Sometimes, folks, hey, but he made $45 a week. That's what he was making back then. I want you to look at my previous show. What it tells you is this: these horses can't be riding. I took the total population of the world, 7.7 billion. I got all these numbers in my head. 7.7 billion people on the planet. 1.9 billion is a quarter of the planet. According to verse 8 in chapter 6 of Revelation, we're told a quarter of the earth, 25% of the population is going to die because of war, famine, and disease. You can look all these numbers up, folks. Google has them for you. 9 million people die of hunger and hunger-related diseases every year. Did you know that? Hunger and hunger-related diseases, 9 million people die every year. There hasn't been, over the last 30 years, there hasn't been more than 1 million people dying of war-related issues. Hasn't. You can look at the whole population of the world's populace, and you don't get more than 60 million people dying a year off of every related disease there is, or every related form of death. It'd take you more than 30 years to come if you took all the deaths there are for every reason under the sun. You'd have to be more than 30 years to reach 1.9 billion people. These horses could not be riding. Folks, I'm not trying to hide things from you. I want you to go online. Go to CochraneMinistries.com. Go through the first 9 chapters of The Graph. See if you like the book. You'll get to see who the first horse is there too. If you like the book, get the book. It's only $25 plus shipping. Next week, I'm going to talk about the earthquakes and prophecies that are about to happen. Understand, the beginning of sorrows isn't happening because we're not seeing the horses. Look for more to come. Until next time, take care.